the whiny, wicked left and the killing of free speech in America. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Why do the Democrats hate free speech so badly? Why do they rail against speech coming from conservative mouths or Christian viewpoints? Why do they hate patriotic Americans exercising their freedom of speech? Well, the simple reason is because the Democrats, the left, the hard left in America, which has taken over the Democrat Party, cannot stand dissenting viewpoints because the viewpoints that they themselves present are morally reprehensible and don't stand for anything except personal, divisive, anti-American principles and agenda. And that's principles in air quotes. But before I get into all that, I want to mention that you can now find Bold and Blunt at edify.app/podcasts. That is the online platform to go to for all your faith-based podcasts. And yes, Bold and Blunt is among its offerings. And you can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are offered, and especially at WashingtonTimes.com. Go to WashingtonTimes.com, scroll to the bottom of the page and find the newsletter section. Click on my name and sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter that comes out with all my commentaries that I write all week long at the Washington Times, along with my twice weekly Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcasts. And for all you out there already subscribed, thank you. Thank you so much for your support, not just of Bold and Blunt and of my work, but of all of the Washington Times work. Because you know what? It's getting real hard to find media sources out there that will give you anything outside the government narrative, the government-approved narrative, which leads into this whole issue of free speech in America. Democrats are steadily driving us down a path of Marxism, where only the speech that is approved by the government in power at the time, meaning the Democrats right now, only that speech is allowed to get out and about in the open. And anybody who dares speak otherwise is immediately vilified, immediately booted from the social media, immediately called out in the mainstream media as a nutcase, immediately attacked, or in the case of Supreme Court justices just doing their job, immediately surrounded by mobsters in the streets who set up camp to protest about matters, about legal matters, about constitutional matters, of which they are largely ignorant. Listen to this. Listen to this from Barack Obama speaking at Stanford University just a short time ago.
Indeed, one of the biggest reasons for democracy's weakening is the profound change that's taken place in how we communicate and consume information. For more and more of us, search and social media platforms aren't just our window into the internet, they serve as our primary source of news and information. No one tells us that the window is blurred.
Really? No one tells us the window is blurred? Actually, Democrats tell us when the window is blurred, and by that, it's meant that Democrats tell us when not to listen, when speech is deemed offensive, when conservative speakers especially have crossed the line. So that's his first deception right there. No one tells us the window is blurred. Well, certainly Barack Obama tells us, as he's about to, in his famous speech now on disinformation.
Subject to unseen distortions and subtle manipulations. All we see is a constant feed of content where useful, factual information and happy diversions and cat videos flow alongside lies, conspiracy theories, junk science, quackery, white supremacist, racist tracks, misogynist screeds.
See how he's setting himself up to be the arbiter of truthful information. First, he's laying the groundwork, which is all truthful, right? We see cat videos alongside conspiracy theory posts. Nobody disagrees with that. But what he's trying to do is lead us down this path. Lead us down this path like a Pied Piper blowing his whistle of accepting that only the government is in position to decide which posts on social media are conspiracy theories versus truths.
Over time, we lose our capacity to distinguish between fact, opinion, and wholesale fiction.
Well, speak for yourself. Not all of us lose our ability to discern between fact and opinion. As a matter of fact, some of us never lose that ability. But Democrats, clever Democrats in the political realm, want it believed that, again, here we are being led down the path, only government can determine which speech is truth versus which speech is myth.
Tech platforms need to accept that they play a unique role in how we as a people and people around the world are consuming information, and that their decisions have an impact on every aspect of society.
Yeah, that's speaking the obvious. We know that.
With that power comes accountability. And in democracies like ours, at least,
it's not a democracy so much as a democratic republic. Again, America is not a democracy. Founding fathers didn't want a democracy because they knew, that it would devolve into mob rule, which is exactly where we're at now. Again, look at the mobs surrounding Supreme Court justices' homes right now, 6 of them. And Barack Obama knows this. This is his clever, serpenty, snaky, devilishly sly way of slipping into the national discourse. The idea, planting the seed, the idea that only government is able to save us stupid Americans from making that so easy to make mistake of mixing up myth for truth, of substituting lies for truths, of being deceived by those dastardly conservatives into thinking what those dastardly, deplorable conservatives put out in any way, shape, or form is truthful.
The need for some democratic oversight.
And there we have it.
As citizens, we have to take it upon ourselves.
We need some democratic oversight. What does that mean? We need some in government to oversee free speech, because that's the democratic way, right? Let's play that little part again. That's such a significant slip of the tongue. This is where he tips his hand.
An impact on every aspect of society.
Okay, so big tech has to realize that they have an impact on every aspect of society. Blah de blah.
With that power comes accountability. And in democracies like ours, at least, the need for some democratic oversight.
The need for some democratic oversight. There you go. The Department of Disinformation, the Ministry of Truth. From Barack Obama's lips to the Department of Homeland Security under Joe Biden.
As citizens, we have to take it upon ourselves to become better consumers of news.
Yeah, it's the patriotic
looking at
duty.
Sources, thinking before we share, and teaching our kids to become critical thinkers who know how to evaluate sources and separate opinion from fact.
You know, the Democrat Party could learn quite a bit from listening, not just listening to what Obama is saying here about the need for critical thinkers to be born and raised in America, but they could also learn a thing or two by applying that common sense, so obvious statement. No duh, we need critical thinkers. But the reason we need critical thinkers in America, and here's the deception of Barack Obama's speech, is so that we have critical thinkers who can listen to someone like Barack Obama, who is just a slippery, snaky salesman, right, of deception, of far-left agenda, anti-American agenda. We need critical thinkers who can listen to someone like Barack Obama and pick apart what he says and separate the lies from truths. And when you put it all in a couple of piles, you see that it's 99% truth and 1% lie, which is exactly the most successful way the devil himself, Satan himself, sells his demonic, wicked, sinful, devious ways. But that's why we need critical thinkers. So we have critical thinkers in America who can pick apart what the Democrats say and discern the lies and then fight effectively. And the Democrats know that. The Democrats know that they're the ones that are perpetrating the lies and deceptions in America. Why else do you think that the teachers' unions want to stifle any type of teaching in public schools that shows America in a positive light? Why do you think teachers want to shove into American youth's minds that capitalism is an inherently racist system? And it's interesting to me that even the New York Times recently opined on the problem that we're facing in America on free speech. In March of 2022, the editorial board at the New York Times ran this piece, America has a free speech problem. And it starts, for all the tolerance and enlightenment that modern society claims, Americans are losing hold of a fundamental right as citizens of a free country, the right to speak their minds and voice their opinions in public without fear of being shamed or shunned. This social silencing, the New York Times goes on to write, this depluralizing of America has been evident for years, but dealing with it stirs yet more fear. It feels like a third rail, dangerous. For a strong nation and open society, that is dangerous. And then the board opines, how has this happened? Well, it's happened because the Democrats have pushed for it to happen. For years now, for decades. The left has supported the idea that some speech is okay, but other speech is dangerous speech and needful of government oversight, meaning government clamp down. Where do you think we got that idea of hate speech? That was the seed of free speech intolerance. And from the concept of hate speech we had on college campuses around the nation, we had free speech zones put up, as if you can speak freely here, but 2 feet to your right, you can't speak freely. But get back in that box, that so declared free speech zone, and again, you're allowed to speak freely again. It's ridiculous. And now, of course, as people were warning decades ago where this would lead in America, now, of course, we are facing this. We are facing a loss of free speech in America. From Pew Research, December 2021. For many Americans, views of offensive speech aren't necessarily clear-cut. Offensive speech used to mean dropping the F-bomb in public, right? That was offensive. Now offensive speech means saying the J-word, Jesus, in public. Or being Donald Trump and speaking on Twitter. That's offensive speech. Or being about any type of conservative who dares to support Donald Trump, or even speaks about things like founding fathers. That's offensive speech. Back to this Pew poll. About 2/3 of U.S. adults, 65%, say that people being too easily offended is a major problem in the country today. While a slimmer majority, 53%, say that people saying offensive things to others is a major problem. Yeah, that's those whiny millennials out there. That's those whiny younger people who think that because you say something that offends them, that you're not allowed to say that anymore. That it's you who has to shut up and stand down, instead of them having to grow up or mature and remember that old childhood slogan, that old childhood chant. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Or how about forming an argument based on fact and sound reasoning that can refute the speech that you find so offensive? That's called maturity. Here's PR Newswire. January 2022, Free Speech for All poll reveals Americans' views on free expression post-2020. A landmark survey by Knight Foundation and Ipsos reveals where Americans agree and disagree on free speech and the First Amendment. So let's look through this and see where they agree. More than 9 in 10 Americans agree that protecting free speech is an important part of American democracy. Well, yeah, it's easy to agree in principle, but unfortunately, 9 in 10 Americans aren't there defending free speech in America's society and culture right now. It's more like a 50-50 thing. 50% of America defends freedom of speech, and the other 50% think that dangerous speech, disinformation, and misinformation ought to be shut down, with the government, of course, deciding what is dangerous speech, what constitutes misinformation and disinformation. 50% of America believes what Barack Obama says about the need to have a government entity in charge of deciding what speech is approved and what speech needs to be shut down. 90% of Americans, PR Newswire writes, agree that people should be allowed to express unpopular opinions. Again, it's easy to say that in a poll, but that's not how it's being played out. Not in America, not at this time. We have too many people in America who think free speech sounds good. Free speech is in our Constitution. Free speech is a great right. But then they want to water that idea of free speech and put qualifiers on it. They say things like, yeah, free speech is great, but some free speech should be stopped. Some speech should be silenced. And then they go on to qualify that further by characterizing the some speech that should be silenced as dangerous speech or misinformation and disinformation. Well, it all comes down to who decides, right? Who decides the labels? And that's the problem. And my guest today is Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado, and he has quite a bit to say about misinformation, disinformation, and the idea of government determining who gets to say what in America. Congressman Buck, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you, Cheryl. And let me start, if I can, by just congratulating you on your new book and taking on a very difficult subject. And I've read it, and I really am impressed by how you approach this the difficult issue of the lockdown. And I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it if they take the time to read it. So thank you for doing that.
Wow, you read my book? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for those kind words, and I appreciate the work you do on Capitol Hill. You are definitely one of the good guys, patriotic citizens. So it's an honor to have you on Bold and Blunt. And I want to talk about an issue that I know is dear to you because I see you all the time talking about this issue, the disinformation board that this administration wants to establish. I was happy to see that an FCC commissioner, Brendan Carr, came out yesterday, and he called this board unconstitutional, which I think is the basic argument we should all be making. Where do you see this headed?
Well, I think that like a lot of the things that the liberals and progressives do, they start out with this very benign language, and the underlying intent can be and often is very dangerous. And to think that government is going to decide what we say is acceptable or unacceptable, or is the truth, or is dangerous, is absolutely un-American. It is contrary to our constitutional principles, particularly the First Amendment right to free speech. And I think that we have to really guard against what this administration is doing. We've seen already that they're willing to use law enforcement like the FBI to investigate parents and try to chill speech at school board meetings because parents disagree with critical race theory being taught in schools. We've seen this administration use COVID policy to intimidate speech with individuals, and now we're seeing them start a disinformation board that I believe is dangerous and could very well be used in the short term. They always use things in the long term to undermine our constitutional rights, but in the short term, I believe that they will be able to use this to try to intimidate speech on the conservative side.
Absolutely, they will. I agree completely. And do you see any curious timing between Barack Obama kind of coming out of the shadows and to make a speech recently about misinformation, and then here we are a couple weeks later, it seems like this board being announced through Joe Biden's administration?
Well, I think everyone in America, Republican and Democrat, are wondering who is running the White House, because it's clearly not Joe Biden.
Right.
He does not have the mental capacity to do the job, and so there are people that are propping him up, and I think Barack Obama is playing a role. A lot of the people in the White House, a lot of the people in the Biden administration are former Obama staffers. I'm sure the president has relationships with many of the people in the White House. And so, no, I don't find it surprising that there is a relationship between the president's speech and then the announcement of this board. I think that the Obama administration hoped that Hillary Clinton would become president and they would have 12 years of implementing their policies. They were thwarted in that by President Trump, and I think they're trying to get back on track. The other thing I think is really important to note is this is an attempt to divert attention from so many of the terrible things that are going on right now. Inflation and the price of gas at the gasoline pump, and the terrible withdrawal in Afghanistan, and our border crisis, and the weakness that our allies and enemies sense right now, and the willingness of Russia to invade Ukraine. There are so many bad things going on in the world that this is just something that the administration is putting out there, hoping people aren't focused on some of the other issues that are really driving Americans crazy.
That's kind of how I look at how the Democrats are now busily exploiting the Roe v. Wade leak. Because if there's anything that could drive out the lunatic fringe of the left, the Democrat Party, the far left, and raise funds for the party, it's a threat to free and unfettered access to abortion. And I kind of think the left is actually using this issue to drum up support for the feckless Joe Biden, who's dragging down candidates in the Democrat Party who face campaigns and re-election this year.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that they will use anything they can to divert attention from the results of their terrible policies. And I think that abortion has always been a hot-button issue with the right and the left, but it's something now that they actually have to work through state legislatures if they want to get their agenda accepted, as opposed to just having 9 unelected, or really 5 unelected folks in black robes making a decision for the country and legislating for the country. So I think that the challenge to abortion is not real. In my home state of Colorado, we have a ridiculous and terrible abortion law that allows abortion up until birth for any reason.
Wow.
And I think that many states will have very liberal and really tragic abortion laws, but the reality has never gotten in the way of Democrats fundraising.
Does it surprise you? Because I'm sure you've heard from constituents or opponents of your politics. I'm sure you've heard criticisms from people around America as you travel or as you publicly speak that you're guilty of putting forth dangerous speech. I know there are some things that I've said, and it seems I'm attacked frequently these days for putting forth dangerous speech and causing issues in America because of dangerous rhetoric. I've never seen that before so widely pronounced in America. This is new of the last couple years. Are you experiencing the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. I see it all the time in the Judiciary Committee when we debate bills. I see it in other areas. I see it in the mainstream media, and it's really a threat, again, to speech. Speech is dangerous, and it started, I think, Cheryl, on college campuses where students were taught that, if they don't like something, here's a safe space, and the word triggered came up when people's attitudes, values, arguments were challenged, and so because we can challenge each other and come to a better result. When the government decides in communist China that this is the policy and anybody who disagrees with the policy will be punished, they don't come up with the best result. And so I think what the left is doing is really moving us to an area of socialism that is extremely dangerous and really undermines one of the great values that we have in this country, and that is to be able to challenge each other. And if I'm wrong, that's fine. Then the audience, the people who are listening can make their decision that I'm wrong. But if I'm right, then I also have the ability to change opinions.
Yes, the left is very clever about moving the goalposts, and I agree with you that the college campuses have become really hot points for a look ahead with warning about where America is headed. Do you see hope for the future of America based on what you're seeing coming out of college campuses nowadays?
You know, Cheryl, why I see hope for America, and I see great hope for America. One, I interview young people who are applying to military academies as part of my job as a congressman. I look at those young people and I think this country is in great hands. These are people who are straight A students and scored great on their test scores and have captain of the football team or the lead in the school play or just great kids. And I think those folks are going to rise up and they recognize what's good for America and what's not good. I also see immigrants coming to this country, and they're coming to this country because we are the land of opportunity and the land of freedom, and those immigrants want something better. They don't want to go back to a socialist state. They want this capitalism and the freedom of speech that we enjoy here. So I have great hope for our future because of people like Cheryl Chumley who are willing to speak out and hold the left accountable, and I think people listen.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and I do take optimism with spots of freedom fighters that I see around America. But I also see a very clever left that is shifting goalposts where in areas where a lot of people aren't aware the goalposts are being shifted. And I'd just like to get your response to this one example. The face mask mandates that the CDC had been forcing on travelers in America. A federal judge reeled those back, as you're aware. And conservatives, patriots around America, they cheered that ruling. But at the same time, I wonder, why weren't more people upset that that ruling was there for a judge to make in the first place? Because in this country, we either have God-given freedoms or we don't. And whether our side wins or not, it doesn't take away from the fact that certain things shouldn't even make it to courts or to the political realm for decision. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see it, and I agree with you that we shouldn't have to go to court to win a case. And I'm thinking in particular about the churches that were shut down
Yes.
during the lockdown. And you write about that, and it's so important for us to recognize how religious liberty is a vital component of our freedoms in this country. And you're absolutely right, those things shouldn't go to court. But the bottom line is elections have consequences. I heard that first from President Obama. And when Trump got elected, they weren't talking about that as much. But now we understand that elections have consequences because Joe Biden has taken us down this very dangerous path of overspending under the guise of COVID, and also these restrictions on our freedoms and choices that we make. But the courts are there just because of Joe Biden. The courts are there to make sure that government doesn't overstep. So while it's not ideal that someone has to go to court to challenge a restriction by government, it is the way the system is set up, and thank God we have good judges who are willing to follow the law.
That's true. And thank God we had Donald Trump appointing some of those judges. Yes, it'd be a disaster right now if Hillary Clinton had won.
Oh, absolutely. 12 years of the same party appointing judges really changes the balance of the court. And in case of how you see the world and how I see the world, it's a real threat to our freedoms when the Democrats appoint judges.
I know we only have a couple minutes left, so let's just wrap up by talking about big tech. I was slow to the whole game of regulating big tech because I saw them as private companies, and I don't like the idea of conservatives making the argument that government should regulate private companies. But at the same time, I recognize that whole argument about Section 230 and so forth. And being booted from some social media myself, I felt the so-called censorship. So where do you see the whole big tech censorship, whether you can call it censorship or not? Where do you see the whole big tech stifling of conservative and even Christian viewpoints going in the years to come?
So, Cheryl, I'm working very hard, not on regulation, but on enforcement. What I'd like to see are laws that create competition in these marketplaces. Let's have 5 Facebooks. Let's have 6 Instagrams and 12 Googles, and give people a choice, just like we do for cable TV, just like we do for newspapers. Let's give people a choice in terms of social media, and I believe that that will address the issue far better than government deciding whether this is dangerous speech or not dangerous speech, or having these wokesters in California making those kinds of decisions within the company and then allowing someone to sue. I think that's a really inefficient way of addressing this issue. I believe in competition in the marketplace. I believe government has a role to ensure and foster competition in the marketplace, and then step out and let the market determine what goods are better than others.
I completely agree with that viewpoint. Do you think it's too late, though? Do you think there are too many on Capitol Hill who are beholden to big tech in terms of financial backing?
No, I don't. I think that we are winning this battle. Those who want to create competition are winning the battle. And I believe you're going to see some bills passed this year in this Congress in a very bipartisan way. And I believe that we'll be able to continue down this path. And the companies are scared to death, throwing out ridiculous arguments about, well, this will make us weaker against China. We don't beat China because we have lower labor wages or other advantages. We beat China because we out-innovate China, and innovation occurs because of competition in the marketplace.
Awesome. We're winning. That's a great way to end. I want to thank you so much, Congressman Buck, for your time on Bold and Blunt and for the work you do for America. Really appreciate your fight.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's been great being with you.
Free speech in America, it's in peril. And look, if you're a regular Democrat voter, you have to take a look at this modern-day Democrat Party. And if you look with any clear eyes at all, you have to see that this Democrat Party is not the same Democrat Party of your parents' age, of your parents' era, of JFK years, of even Bill Clinton years. This is a brand new anti-America, American-hating Democrat Party, and they are heck bent on crumbling the Constitution and bringing America to her knees and ushering in a new great reset that will put America at the bottom and American citizens bowing down to government bureaucrats. That is not hyperbole. That is the bare bones truth. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, go to WashingtonTimes.com, subscribe to Bold and Blunt there, and get it delivered right to your email box, along with my daily commentaries. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you will get my newsletter right in your email box, along with my commentaries and my Bold and Blunt podcasts. Or you can go to edify.app/podcast, subscribe there, or of course anywhere podcasts are offered. And don't forget my new book, Lockdown, The Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. It's available now. Congressman Ken Buck apparently has given it his thumbs up. So get your copy today and find out what the left has in store for America. At the very least, educate yourself so you can fight effectively. Thank you again for listening, and remember, stay blunt, stay bold.